Good morning, everyone. Burbank-Valley Garden Club is happy, very happy to present Scott Logan talking about the Gottlieb Native Garden and his amazing photography there. Scott is a naturalist, and Susan Gottlieb, whom you met in the first of these presentations, hired Scott over 6 years ago to identify the creatures that were starting to come to the garden and catalog them. And his method for doing that is to use his own photography. After he'd been doing it a bit, he and Susan realized that this was more than a cataloging project. It was just an amazing, as you will see, an amazing photographic record of the garden. Scott, I'm so happy you're here today to share this with us. I personally have found your presentation, which I saw almost a year ago through Southern California Horticulture Society. I found your presentation so stimulating. I immediately went to Wild Wings and purchased an Oriole feeder. And it was one of the best things I ever did. I've had Orioles all spring and summer.
Oh, fantastic.
So Scott, you go ahead and take it away. I'm gonna just leave here.
All right, Kathy. Well, thank you very much. And I say we just get right into this. So give me 1 second here. All right. So actually, before I start here, I believe that I'm imagining that many of you saw Susan's presentation, and I'll just give you a quick overview. This is a just over 1 acre yard that is sort of it's directly in the middle of Los Angeles. It's west of Coldwater Canyon and north of Sunset Boulevard. A good portion of the yard, probably half of it, is terraced down an east-facing hillside, and again, it's basically surrounded by very pruned, manicured, non-native gardens. So everything that's going on, most everything that's going on in this garden, is because of what Susan has done. All right. So a little background on me. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and I've always marveled at how much wildlife can be found in a city that contains over 4 million humans. But I was more surprised to find out how diverse the wildlife could be in just one urban yard. And that's a yard that's landscaped with California native plants. So for over 6 years now as the garden's naturalist, I've been documenting the wildlife that utilizes this space, as well as coordinating and participating in university-led scientific study. The Gottlieb Native Garden continues to prove, without a doubt, that we can begin to repair the negative effects caused by decades of urban development and support native wildlife by simply planting native plants. So you won't recognize me in this photo, but this is how I spend most of my time in the garden, literally lying in the bushes with a camera, or in this case, it's lying in the buckwheat. My subject in this shot was this large grass spider with a European honeybee it had just captured. Up to this point, I've been able to identify nearly 500 species of animals on this one property. This would include tiny insects up to some of LA's largest mammals. Over 100 species of birds are on that list. As of last week, it was 110 species. But a Eurasian collared dove was seen in the garden last week, so now we're at 111. A few of these species have only been one-day wonders, like these Caspian terns. And some of these species appear in the garden only infrequently, like pine siskins. And for any of you out there that have Niger feeders, you may have seen siskins on those feeders from time to time. They're super unpredictable in the lower elevations of Los Angeles, but sometimes we'll find them here. Occasionally, these birds are really unique, like this male Lucistic Allen's hummingbird. His coloration is very different than a normal male Allen's. If you compare it to the male that just landed on the edge of the bath, you'll notice that wherever brown tones appear normally, those areas are white on this Lucistic bird. And he hung around the garden for over 3 years, but I have not seen him now for about 1.5 years. Some of the birds on the species list normally reside east of the Rockies, like this white-throated sparrow that spent a winter in the garden. But probably the most lost long-distant migrant that I've been able to find in the garden is this chestnut-sided warbler, a species normally found on the northeastern coast of the United States. But the majority of the birds that are on the garden's list are resident, like this house wren. Another impressive list is 26 species of mammals utilizing this one urban yard. Our latest mammal species recorded was a western Mastiff Bat. This brings the total of 10 confirmed bat species hunting insects in the garden's airspace. And I'm currently in the vetting process of 2 other species of bats, long-eared myotis and pocketed free-tailed bat. If confirmed, that will bring the bat species count to 13 and at 28 total mammal species in the garden. And I think that's pretty crazy, right? And by the way, I captured this moment with a thermal imaging camera. So the garden's ability to attract and provide for such a wide variety of animal species has caught the attention of researchers, educators, and a broad range of environmental groups, including the Natural History Museum. They've done bio-blitzes in the garden. And National Geographic magazine. And being a photographer, this was a highlight for me as I got to spend 3 days with a National Geographic Society fellow, Charlie Hamilton James. The BBC has filmed in the garden, as has the National Geographic Channel. And for those of you who do watch Nat Geo Channel, almost all the hummingbird clips they show in their programs are from Susan's yard. Some of the universities carrying out studies in the garden would include Loyola Marymount University, UCLA, Cal Poly, Occidental College, actually the Moore Lab of Zoology at Occidental College, and the University of California, Davis. Out of all the universities, UC Davis has the longest running research program in the garden. Dr. Lisa Tell's Hummingbird Health and Conservation Program has used the garden for study since 2014, and I've personally been collaborating with them since 2015. Essentially, hummingbirds are captured and processed. All the vitals are taken, including blood and feather samples for future DNA analysis. And they are actually working on Allen's hummingbirds right now with a huge DNA project. Even the hummingbird's weight is taken. If you ever want to know how a hummingbird gets weighed, here it is. And that is a male Anis hummingbird. The last part of the process is to insert a tiny pit tag under the hummingbird's skin. A small incision is made to insert the tag, and then the bird is sutured up. Last, a numbered band is put on the bird's right leg, and this becomes a future visual indicator to me that the bird is participating in the study. Then the bird is ready to be released. So 6 antennas are strategically placed in the yard, and they track these tagged hummingbirds. The gray ring in this image is one of those antennas. Over the past 6 years, the program has banded or tagged over 1,000 hummingbirds in this very garden. As the antenna collects data, this is what it looks like. The oldest known bird in the study now is just over 6 years old. UC Davis's groundbreaking work on the health and social relationships of urban hummingbirds has now been published in many peer-reviewed journals. So for my species documentation project, much of the identification involves photography. 2 years into this assignment, we realized a compelling wildlife story was being captured with these images, and the seed for the next Gottlieb Native Garden book was planted. The idea became a reality last year with the release of the Gottlieb Native Garden, An Intimate Wildlife Journey. So the majority of the photos from this point forward are from this just published book. Now, I thought before we get into the photos of the animals themselves, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the techniques I use to get them. I like to use flash in my photography. I personally like the look and feel of mixing different light sources when creating an image. On this afternoon, I was capturing female leafcutter bees provisioning nests with pollen for their young. If you look closely at the entrances to these tubes, you'll notice that they're different colors. Those hues represent the colors of the flowers or leaves that they used for capping the brood chambers. I spend a lot of time exploring at night. In this image, one of my trail cameras captured me as I checked camera settings while shooting nocturnal animals. Here's the bird that I was photographing that night, a common porwheel hunting from a cement swale. An interesting fact about common porwheels is that they're the only known bird species in the world to truly hibernate, and we have them right here in Southern California. I also have a few passive DSLR cameras that I continually set up, they're camera traps that I continually move around the garden. It takes a great deal of time to set them up and to keep them operating. One of the problems is that wildlife loves to chew on the cables, but in the end, all the effort pays off with intimate shots like this one. These fawn siblings were no more than a day or two old when this photo was taken. Camera traps have the ability to capture really candid moments. Oh, sorry, that's me checking on equipment after dark. But out of all the photography featured in this project, the most technically complicated and time-consuming are the focus stacked images made with live animals. This would be a typical setup, a Nikon D850 controlled by an iPad with multiple flashes. Sometimes I do shoot indoors so I can control the environment. Focus stacking is basically taking multiple photos of one subject at different focal points and then stitching them all together to form an ultra-sharp image. It's an amazing process that has the ability to produce high detail images of very small subjects, even aphids on these flower petals. With focus stacking, you are in complete control of sharpness and depth of field, enabling you to do things that just aren't possible with normal camera settings. This happens to be an image of a Carolina sphinx moth in front of the Gottlieb's entryway to their home, so I think it's a great place to start our photographic journey. As we're looking at these images, I'll ask you to please keep in mind that every animal in this presentation is from one single yard. A yard right here in the middle of Los Angeles. Some of these animals are reclusive and difficult to find, like this ring-necked snake. Others are so shy, we all have to be really lucky to ever see them, like this gray fox, the cutest animal ever. But the majority of these animals, like this hermit thrush, can be found all over Los Angeles. All they need is the proper habitat, and that's where native gardening comes in. I do want to point out one thing about this garden, though. The east side adjoins chaparral habitat, allowing a natural entryway for species of animals that need an expanse of native habitat, like this California quail and California thrasher. But the majority of the animals we get in the garden, like the cedar waxwing, could end up in virtually any of our yards. Now, many people think of European honeybees when they think of what they want their garden to support. But as the name implies, these bees are not native. They commandeer habitat like this western screech owl box and outcompete our native bees for pollen. When a honeybee swarm moves into the Gottlieb Native Garden, it's humanely relocated like this hive that took over a barn owl box. When it comes to bees, I believe that we should be focusing on the benefits of our native bees, like this ligated furrow bee, or this pollen-covered Slevin cellophane bee, a personal favorite of mine. They're gorgeous. In Los Angeles County alone, we have over 500 species of native bees. These bees evolved with our native flora and have become expert niche pollinators. This diversity ultimately contributes to a healthy ecosystem. The garden has approximately 25 species of regular occurring bees. This digger bee is one of them. And these bees are really, really entertaining to watch because they have this crazy zigzag flight as they fly from flower to flower. And sometimes you can get lucky and see them cleaning pollen off of their tongue like this one is doing. Some of the bees that I find in the garden I think are extremely beautiful, like this female metallic green sweat bee in the correct light, many species of sweat bees shimmer in metallic hues of greens, blues, and golds. There are many plant families that I consider excellent for insect pollinators, and buckwheat, which is pictured here, is definitely one of them. Bees aren't the only pollinators working hard in the garden. Many fly species are good pollinators too. And some of these are not just good pollinators, but they benefit the garden in other ways. Take this four-spotted aphid fly, for instance. Their young are carnivorous. Females lay eggs near aphid infestations, and once they hatch, the larvae eat large amounts of the tiny pests. After flies, other beneficial pollinators would be butterflies, moths, beetles, wasps, and of course, hummingbirds. Although not the best pollinators in our gardens, hummingbirds don't stop pollinating when it rains, if it's ever going to rain here again. Another group of insects that we all enjoy having in our gardens is butterflies. As I'm sure many of you already know, monarch butterflies can be attracted to your garden by planting milkweed for females to lay eggs on, as it is the host for their larvae. When planting milkweed, though, it's very important to plant only our native varieties. The most popular one for us here in Los Angeles is a fascicularis, or narrow leaf milkweed. Ask your nursery for narrow leaf milkweed and make them carry it. Monarchs have a much better chance for a healthy reproduction cycle when using native milkweeds. And just as monarchs are attracted to milkweed, other species of butterflies have been attracted to the garden by planting host plants for their larvae. Quail bush is a host plant for the western pygmy blue, one of my favorite butterflies found in the garden, measuring in at a mere 3/8 of an inch. They are the smallest butterfly found in North America and one of the smallest in the entire world. Butterflies and moths are not just beautiful, but they're an important part of the food chain. They lay an enormous amount of eggs, which turn into caterpillars, some of which can be huge, like this white-lined sphinx moth larva consuming a primrose flower bud. As the saying goes, if something's not eating your plants, then your garden is not part of the ecosystem. But not to worry, as most butterfly and moth larvae are very small. But whatever the size, insect larvae are an important food source to many animals in the garden, especially birds during breeding season. Insects are critical to the success of songbird broods, like Bewick's wrens and bush tits, pictured here. And by the way, if you've ever found a messy looking hanging nest that was constructed out of some kind of soft material and decorated with bits of leaves and sticks and flowers and stuff, that's a bush tit nest. It's an ingenious design nest. So most native plants produce food that our native animals are familiar with, like this toyon bush. When it comes to having the ability to support native wildlife, toyon is a keystone species. Not only do birds like this western bluebird eat the berries, but toyon flowers are great for native pollinators. And clearly this white-banded crab spider is aware of this as she lies in wait for her next meal. Toyon is the perfect example of how wildlife prefers our native over non-native plants. Toyon fruit will be stripped from its branches by wildlife before ever touching the similar looking non-native pyracantha berries, even if those plants are found right next to each other. And this is true for seeding plants as well. Lesser goldfinches will eat native sage seeds before other non-native seeds. Historically, Anna's hummingbirds were the only year-round species of hummingbirds found in Los Angeles. They're connected with the rhythm of our native flowering plants, and man's native blooms are very important nectar sources for them late in the year. And while we're on the subject of food sources, the garden has some bird feeders intended to augment the nourishment being provided by the native plants. Nectar feeders are the most abundant, with dozens of hummingbirds feeding at them at any given time. This photo was taken in July, and it shows the 3 species of hummingbirds expected in the garden during this time. And that would be Anna's hummingbird, Allen's hummingbirds, and black-chinned hummingbirds. And every March, like clockwork, orioles arrive at the feeders designed especially for them. and they'll be filled and ready. This is a male hooded oriole, and for those of you with Oriole feeders, you may be noticing that orioles are coming more frequently than they have been, and that's because they'll soon be leaving to migrate south, and they're working on putting on fat stores. A few seed feeders are available for our granivorous bird, like this California scrub jay, who is a resident and does not migrate. And mealworms are popular too, especially during breeding season. This male spotted towhee is about to bring back a load of worms to his nest. Also, notice anything in the upper right portion of this image? That's Sparky, one of Susan's cats in the cat run. These cattatrails provide an ingenious way for cats to roam the garden. Wildlife is safe from the cats, and the cats are protected from the wildlife. I've never seen anything like this before. But I can't claim that the fish in the upper pond are safe from the wildlife. When herons come in for a meal, they are not chased off, and they're allowed to hunt without being harassed. When wildlife takes something from the yard, we just simply consider it nature's tax. Along with food, wildlife needs a clean source of water. Here, a yellow-rumped warbler drinks early morning dew that had collected on fairy duster leaves. Water features are an excellent addition to any landscape, and the Gottlieb Native Garden has 5 of them. Not only do animals like these band-tailed pigeons drink from them, but animals bathe in them as well. The more diverse your water sources are, the more diverse the wildlife will be that uses them. Take hummingbirds, for instance. They love their baths as they forage for nectar and get full of their sticky business, but they will normally only bathe in very shallow, consistently moving water. No chemicals are ever used in any of the garden's water features, and 3 of them now support thriving ecosystems. Over time, these water features have become an important stop for migrating birds. Birds have an excellent memory for the resources along their migratory paths, and every year, hundreds of migratory birds visit the garden. During late April, it's not uncommon to see groups of western tanagers jockeying position in the lower water feature. Even a stormy afternoon didn't stop these cedar waxwings from using a water source, which this one is basically just a depression in a rock. So many of these images have stories attached to them. I want to stop for a moment and tell you a story about this one. This was taken with one of my DSLR camera traps. Here's what the camera setup looked like. The bath is in the lower right part of the frame, the camera in the middle left. I happened to be in the garden checking on my equipment when a hailstorm began. So I retreated into the Gottlieb's home to wait it out. About a half an hour later, I returned to find this amazing rainbow. It was magnificent. It arched the entire garden, framed from one side to the other, and lasted for nearly 5 minutes. I mean, even as I sat and admired it, I noticed that hummingbirds would glow brilliant orange as they flew through the bands of color. It wasn't until the rainbow fully dissipated that I took the time to check my camera trap, and this is the image that I found. Apparently, just as the storm had ended, the afternoon sun broke through the clouds and a flock of cedar waxwings flew down to drink and bathe. The timing was remarkable, and luckily my equipment functioned properly to capture the moment. And thankfully, everything performed properly for this moment as well. This is one of my favorite images captured during this entire project. And as you can see, it's more than birds that take advantage of water features. Another important component of a healthy ecosystem are the predators, and they come in many shapes and sizes. We're familiar with spiders like the graceful green lynx spider, and praying mantises like this native bordered mantis. Now, some of you have purchased praying mantis eggs. I'll assume that some of you have purchased mantis eggs from nurseries in the past, but I encourage you not to do that. These are always non-native mantises. They're usually from Asia. They're much bigger than our native species, and ultimately they wreak more havoc in our gardens than any organic pest control that they might provide. One native insect that you can introduce to your garden for organic pest control is green lacewing. During spring, many nurseries sell their eggs, and once these eggs hatch, the larvae will consume large amount of plant-damaging pests. Lacewing larvae are just one of the many small animals that make a living fiercely protecting our yards. Reptiles are very important keeping an ecosystem in balance too. Fence lizards should be recognized by most all of you, and you may have noticed that these lizards spend a good deal of time in bushes and sometimes up in trees. Being in the suborder Iguana explains that behavior. Small snakes, like this western black-headed snake, like to eat small terrestrial things like millipedes and centipedes. And to give you an idea of how small the snake is, those are scrub oak leaves on the ground. Without close inspection, it could be mistaken for a large worm. Snakes come in plus sizes too. Our largest, the San Diego gopher snake, is an excellent rodent hunter. These snakes are confused with rattlesnakes all the time because they will mimic rattling with a combination of vibrating their tail and hissing. Unfortunately, if it's a human that makes this misidentification, it's usually tragic for the snake. After good long rainy periods, which we have not had, black-bellied slender salamanders appear, and they did not appear this past winter. They spend the majority of their lives underground, but will venture above ground to feed and breed when the environment is wet enough to keep their skin moist. Many songbirds are excellent hunters, like this western kingbird, but even excellent hunters need to watch out for predators. No small bird in the garden is safe from Cooper's hawks. I know that many of you are not happy about having these predators in your yard, but they are an important part of keeping an ecosystem in balance. Raptors range significantly in scope and size. This sharp-shinned hawk, or in the bird world called sharpie, is about the size of a robin. This is the only bird in our area that I know that can capture a hummingbird in flight. On the other end of the spectrum, in Southern California, the apex predator on wings is the great horned owl. They hunt a wide range of prey and have the ability to carry a rabbit. And when you pack a set of talons like these, everybody gets out of your way. When California ground squirrel populations grow large, we see a lot of our favorite bobcat. He happens to be tagged and collared and is known to the National Park Service as B346. We simply call him Hank. I'm going to back this shot up to show you something interesting. Earlier in the day, before this photo was taken, the camera got photos of two other mammals. That's Leo the cat taking Susan for a walk in the yard. What's telling about this image is that urban wild animals are so used to humans and domestic animals, they don't seem to care about sharing the same space with us. Breeding season in the garden is always exciting and a lively time. Animals are defining and defending territory, collecting nesting material, and building homes to raise their children. After all the preparation, the romance begins. And then the children appear, sometimes loads of them. However you feel about California ground squirrels, baby ground squirrels are pretty darn cute. A magical time to tune into the garden is this period between day and night. It's that space where diurnal animals are just finishing their shift and nocturnal animals are beginning theirs. And once it's dark, I highly recommend exploring your garden to see what you can find. Yes, there will be the usual suspects like orb spiders and moths, all of which I find extremely beautiful. I mean, the wings of moths are literally nature's canvas for elaborate tapestries. To me, the pattern on this elder moth could be used on an elegant dress. But if you simply take the time to be quiet and observe, you're sure to be amazed at what appears. Take beetles, for instance. Some species are active during the day, like this green fruit beetle, but many more are active at night. They come in amazing designs and colors, and their life cycles are fascinating. The beetle on the upper left is a firefly. Yes, we have fireflies in Los Angeles, but it's the flightless females that glow and not the flighted males. But out of all the beetles that I encounter in the garden, black-bearing beetles are by far the most interesting and fantastic. They are always covered in helpful symbiotic mites, and I could do an entire presentation on just their life cycle alone. And let's give a shout out to striped skunks for a moment. When you notice that holes were dug in your garden the night before, you really should be saying thank you. Skunks have an excellent sense of smell and front claws that are built for digging. They snuffle around your garden searching for root-damaging grubs and dig them up to eat, preventing damage to your garden's plants and trees. And this guy happened to be coming from the next door neighbor's yard where apparently their sprinklers were on, and it seems that he got his face muddy while collecting dinner. Oh, and by the way, for those of you that don't like scorpions, to a skunk, they're considered a delicacy. And here's a tip for those of you that do like scorpions. The easiest way to find them at night is by searching with an ultraviolet light. Their exoskeletons glow a bluish color by absorbing the longer wavelengths in the UV spectrum, then re-emitting them in different wavelengths that are visible to us in the dark. Northern raccoons are just one of the many different characters utilizing our gardens at night. And sometimes when these animals' paths cross, there's drama. I know this appears bad for the skunk, but there's no need to worry. In the end, it was the coyote that got the raw end of this encounter. I know this because this was only one frame in a series of photographs. Don't you just love the look on that skunk's face? It's right here is where he's about to leave a lasting impression on the coyote. It's always exciting when you run across a unique animal like this unusually patterned striped skunk. Like the Lucistic hummingbird I showed you, it makes him very easy to identify, and I know from trail cameras that he visits the yard frequently and has been around for about 4 years now. There are 2 great horned owls that have been around even longer. I began working in the garden over 6 years ago, and they've been a bonded pair that entire time. I know it's the same birds because their routine has stayed exactly the same year after year. The larger female owl is on the left, and the male is on the right. Great horned owls' breeding season begins in November, and many will have eggs in their nests by January. They don't actually build their own nests, they commandeer somebody else's, like a red-tailed hawk or a common raven's nest. You might be hearing great horns frequently right now as they're still keeping track of their young that left their nest about a month to a month and a half ago. Another animal romance going on in the garden is between our male bobcat, Hank, and a young female who showed up about 2 years ago. I often wonder if she likes this Park Service bling. In this clip, she's marking a stump in the garden. Her scent will let Hank know that she's in heat and will accept his loving advances. But whether you're prowling around on your own or wandering with others, you must always stay alert and on guard, as there are constant dangers threatening all wildlife, even animals as large as a deer. Yes, a mountain lion even visits the garden. P22 isn't the only lion roaming in the Santa Monica Mountains east of the 405 freeway here in Los Angeles. Huel, as we've affectionately named him, is an uncollared male with unknown origins. Over the past 4 years, our cameras have captured him a few times, the first being in October of 2016. What I find incredible about this cat is that he manages to stay virtually undetected to the residents of the neighborhoods where he's roaming, and that's a testament to how these big cats want nothing to do with human contact. Awe-inspiring encounters with mountain lions aside, our gardens are alive with special moments every day, and I encourage you to take the time to sit quietly and observe. Special moments are sure to reveal themselves, like an adult Cooper's hawk drying its feathers after a morning shower, or a flock of cedar waxwings moving north in spring. Soon you'll know that fall's upon us with the arrival of white-crowned sparrows as they fill the air with their delightful melodies. With patience, you might witness a minor dispute over water rights at a favorite bath. The more you tune into the rhythms of your garden, the more wildlife will appear, and that's how connection happens. That's the zen of it. And who knows, one day you might be sitting quietly and realize that somebody is watching you. Thank you so much for letting me share some of LA's urban wildlife with you. I really hope it inspires you to look in some bushes and turn over some rocks in your own garden. Wildlife can be so rich with native plants. If any of you are interested, I occasionally post on a blog that can be found on the GottliebNativeGarden.com. And for more about the book's garden's fauna and its history, which I think some of you had already seen Susan's presentation and know about this, but I'll tell you again. Susan has a wonderful book, The Gottlieb Native Garden, A California Love Story. So with that, I think I'll turn it back to you guys.
Okay. Thank you so much, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't hear it because we'd all muted ourselves, but there was a lot of places where we laughed out loud or went ooh and ah. I was thrilled. Again, I saw part of your presentation, as I said, several months ago, but you had new material and new words, and it was thrilling for me. I'm going to just peek in chat. Nobody put anything there. So members, please unmute yourselves and ask Scott your questions, or raise your hand. You can also, you may also share your images. While we wait, I want to tell you that at the end of our presentation today, we're going to draw names for copies of your book. And I reviewed the book myself already, looked at it, and I so appreciated the fact that everything in there, all the creatures are named. So if a person has the book, you're going to be able to identify the creatures that come to your garden. And another thing you might tell us is where other people could order those lovely Oriole feeders, because you did tell us that at a previous presentation, and I'm just one happy girl that I have that.
Well, yeah, Oriole feeders are a little bit different than hummingbird feeders because the ports where the birds stick their beaks in is larger than, you know, what you'd find on hummingbird feeders, obviously because the Oriole is a larger bird. The hard thing to balance is when you make that port larger, then bees and wasps can get inside. We've only found two Oriole feeders that really work well. I can't tell you the names of them off the top of my head, but what I could say is if you went to our website, wildwingsla.com, both of those Oriole feeders are there. You don't have to buy them from us, but if you just go to our store, you'll see which Oriole feeders we carry, and you order them from wherever you please. Just a side note, Orioles will be leaving soon. The males are going to be leaving in the next week or two. The females and the kids probably in the next 3 weeks to a month. And then after that, we have to wait until next March.
And it's really thrilling to me that they come pretty much on time. Like the second.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they've got clocks. I guess they do. Huh?
You know, I say, you know, Southern California people, I don't know that they complain, but we don't really have seasons like other, you know, places in the country. But if you tune into the wildlife, you'll know exactly what season it is. You'll know when spring arrives, when fall arrives, you'll know exactly, because these animals are very, very closely tuned in, and they arrive, well, especially migrating birds, they arrive like clockwork. So as I said in the presentation, the birds who are going to tell me fall has arrived is going to be the white-crowned sparrows. They're one of the few sparrow species that sing when they're not on their breeding territory. They just love to sing, 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 sing. And when that singing begins, fall is here in LA.
Yeah. So raise your hand. I'm trying to see everybody. If you could raise your hand if you have a question. I know you do. Okay. Susan.
Well, I was raising my hand because I just thought the presentation was really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you liked it.
I loved it.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
So I'm looking at
Anna?
Yes, I have a question regarding rats in the backyard. I know they're part of the ecosystem, but what do you recommend to enjoy your backyard in the evening without having to see them scurry along the fence every night?
Well, right. So yes, it's hard to be selective about your wildlife, right? But I understand rats can be a problem. If you're doing everything in your yard to keep rats under control, that's one thing, but
Oops.
you can't expect that your neighbors are either. And mainly when it comes to the rats, you don't want, if you have fruit trees, you don't want the fruit to drop on the ground. It makes it really easily available to them. Also, but that's not the biggest thing. The biggest thing for them is when they get out of control is they either have easy access to a bird feeder, so they're stuffing themselves full of bird seed, or people aren't properly keeping their lids closed on their trash cans. A big problem with city trash cans is the lids break, or a little tiny bit of the lid breaks. And what that does is just give access to rats for, a buffet every single night. Now, if for some reason you do have rats in your yard, what I say is do not, please, please, please do not put out rodenticide. Don't let any abatement company come and put out rodenticide. They're going to tell you, oh, it's no big deal. The rats die and they just die somewhere in some secret place. It's a lie. What it does ultimately is it affects all the predators in the food chain above that rat and kills them too. And you end up just chasing your tail with the problem. So but I do understand that in urban areas they're a problem. There are plenty of them. There's no shortage of rodents. So if you put out snap traps, that is a very humane way to do it. Probably the most humane way to kill them are with the electric traps, because it kills them instantly. So that's what I would say. And a lot of people who do live near areas where they could actually dispose of the rat somewhere down in their yard, they keep the rat in their ecosystem that way, because other animals will eat it. But I'm not opposed to killing rats. I get it, but just don't do it with poison.
Right. Now, I have a worm bin. Do you think that may be attracting it as well, or not?
Maybe. I don't know why. Do you find digging in the word bin?
Something is digging in there. Yeah.
Well, my guess is who's digging in there is a skunk.
Oh.
Skunks are the ones who like to dig up live things that are underground, and they're the ones who are built to do it. They have big claws, great sense of smell, and they're usually the ones digging. But I guess if there's a way that you can just put a screen over the top so that a mammal can't get in there to dig, that's what you should do.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a comment about the rats and the worm bins and the composters. We have composters and worm bins here at my house, and we have rats on occasion. My husband puts out the snap traps, and he's careful to check them every morning early and then trigger them so that they do not inadvertently catch a bird that might be foraging near them. So he has to reset them every night. He just doesn't want to see a bird in one of his rat traps, but the rat traps do catch rats. As to the compost bin, one of the things he does for me is he puts galvanized mesh at the bottom of the bin, which is where the digging animal is really trying to get into some of those things. And the worm bin, I actually keep it in my laundry room so nothing can get it.
Yeah, the electric traps work really well because not only are they humane, but they're designed in such a way that really, if you're larger than a rat, you're not getting in there. You can't get in there. So that can be left set all the time. It also lets you know if it's triggered itself, and you don't have to look at the rat. You can just pour the rat out into something or somewhere in your yard, and that's it.
Okay. I'm going to look for an electric one, see if maybe he likes that better.
Yeah, I think it's called a rat zapper.
Oh, great name. Great name. I A
I
couple,
think Martha's trying to speak, but you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. I lived in the Oakland Hills, and we first thought we had mice, and we bought a rat zapper, and they got bigger and bigger. Every morning we'd come out and there'd be this little cheery red light, and finally there was this giant long tail, and I guess we got the great grandfather, but it's a very humane, great way to get rid of them, I must say. So I hadn't heard of that in years.
Yeah, now you just brought up something there too that, you know, some people will complain that they put out rat traps or a zapper, whatever it is, and they don't catch anything. A really good approach to using those devices with rodents, especially rats, is when you initially put them out is you don't set them. Put them out and put the bait on it and let rats come and take that bait. And let them do that for a week or two. What they do is they'll now leave a scent trail that's basically telling other rats there's food this way. And then you set it, and because that scent trail is there, they will literally go to that trap. So that's a good thing to do. Do that first before you set it.
nice.
That's good thing.
Can you, I hope this is okay, because I'm on my phone, Kathy. I apologize. It's different than being on a computer. But can you use those electric rat traps outside?
Yes, I think you can't let them, they can't be somewhere where, like, say, sprinklers would spray directly on them, or they, you know, because they are electric. And basically inside there's two pads, and when they step on those two pads, that's where the shot comes. If that gets wet in there, then it shorts out the trap. But it's very easy to find places outside to put it where they're not going to get direct water sprayed on them.
If you have a question, I think you'll have to speak up. I can't see everyone.
You all good?
Yeah, good presentation.
Thank you. It was wonderful. Wow. That was really so informative and such beautiful, beautiful images. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to our trip to visit your garden. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, it'll put everything in context, I think, now that you've seen the two presentations. And I marvel every time I go there that, you know, all these animals that I photographed there are from this one yard. It's not like they're from all over, they're from one yard. And it really makes you see what you can do in your own yard. I know a lot of people don't have the resources and size of property that the Gottliebs have, but it doesn't matter. If you plant native plants in your yard, it's just as the saying goes, build it and they will come. They will. They're attracted to it. And it's so beneficial to the wildlife that we've trampled so much on here in Los Angeles.
I liked the fact that you mentioned that they memorize where these kinds of gardens are.
Yes, they do.
And hit them every year on their journeys north and south. And
100%. Yes, they do. I mean, if you think of it on their perspective, when they find a food source or a water source, you know, then that's a very important thing to them, and they'll always remember where it's at. They don't want to be searching for food and water. They want to know where it is. And then that way they can have a much more direct line of flight when they migrate. I mean, Los Angeles is in the Pacific Flyway. We have a huge amount of birds that fly through Los Angeles. But when they find your garden, they find a particular water source, they will hit it every single pass through Los Angeles.
I like too, you mentioned having diverse kinds of water sources.
Yes, very important.
And mostly shallow. So
yes.
If
you were to have only one bath in your garden, if all you could have is just one bath, literally a very, very shallow, maybe a half an inch deep water source is the perfect thing for birds. People, you know, think they want to get down in there and, you know, these birds want to go, you know, swimming or whatever. They don't. They want to be in very shallow water, and you'll see very large birds bathe themselves in very shallow water. But if you have the ability to have diverse depths of water, and some that's not moving and some that's moving, you open it up to every species of bird that would come through your yard, as well as a lot of mammals too.
It's important. I was blown away by, someone had a question. Was that Anna?
Yes. Do you recommend leaving fountains on overnight?
Yeah, so there's two issues. One is, if algae or whatever grows, and another one is mosquitoes. If the water is moving in any way, mosquitoes are not going to lay eggs in it, because what it does is it breaks the tension of the water, and when they lay their eggs, they just sink to the bottom and they drown. They need to breathe. So do their young. So when the water is moving in any way, then you're not going to have mosquito larvae in the water, and it will retard algae growth a little bit over time by keeping it moving and sort of oxygenating it and so on. So it's better to have it moving if you can. Some people have it moving during the day, but they turn it off at night. But you should have it moving for a portion of the day. And a caveat of that is that moving water is much more attractive. I shouldn't say caveat, to elaborate on that. Moving water is more attractive to wildlife than stagnant water. And my only guess could be is that the likelihood is fresher if it's moving than if it's stagnant.
And they could probably hear it too.
So a lot of them can hear it. That is absolutely true. Yes. And they see it, they hear it. It's a lot more attention is brought to it.
Thank you.
A final comment for me is I really was blown away by the statement that there are 500 native bee species in LA.
Yep.
Wow.
Yes, California, I think, has over 1,000 native bee species. We have half of those native bee species just here in LA County. Southern California, especially the Los Angeles area, is smack in the middle of a world biodiversity heritage site. And it's because of our varied ecosystems here, from the ocean all the way up to the mountains and the deserts and everything in between. And that creates opportunity for wildlife diversity. And that comes down to insects, and it comes down to bees. And we have one of the highest bee concentrations of species in the world. And that's my biggest thing I'm preaching now is that when people think of bees, they think of European honeybees. We need to save the European honeybee. We need to help the honeybee, on and on and on. We don't. Farmers are on top of it. We need them to grow our crops. That's very important. But the farmers are very on top of it. And they will always keep that bee species going. But the feral bees that are found everywhere, all over Los Angeles, people keeping bees in their yards, all those European honeybees are doing is robbing nectar and pollen from flowers and taking it away from our native bees. And by the way, European honeybees are not the best pollinators in the world. They're general pollinators, and there's certain crops they do a very good job at pollinating. But our native flora has evolved with our native fauna, and it's our native insects that can pollinate our native plants. And without them, we'll lose our native plants. So I am not I'm not a European honeybee advocate. I understand they're very interesting. I understand it'd be very interesting to have a hive and harvest the honey, but we should really be concentrating on our native bees.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Well, Scott, I have to.
Yes, I have one more. When you said water needs to be moving, are you saying put a pump in or in your water wherever you have it? Or
it does not matter how it's moving. It can be, there's a little device called a water wiggler that's basically has a little, it's just a little thing that stands in a bowl of water and has a moving, a little moving part on the bottom of it. It's the simplest device you've ever seen in the world. Just, you could Google water wiggler. And all it does is create ripples in water. And so from ripples in water all the way up to a waterfall is water moving. It's just however you can get it moving.
Thank you.
We just bought a solar device, really small. It's not the water wiggler, but it makes in the daytime only because it relies on the sun. The face of it is about this big, and it pumps up just a tiny little spurt when the sun is hitting it, and it makes ripples.
That's right. That's that from that, like I said, that all the way to a waterfall is just have the water moving in some way.
Yeah, but even if you don't have water moving, water is still good as long as
Yes.
it's clean.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, in other words, if you can't put water out without, if there's no way for you to get the water moving, you still put water out. You still could put a dish out. You could put anything out, especially during this drought. And I'll tell you another thing too, is that water has become so much more important to our wildlife here in Los Angeles over the years, mainly because we're conserving so much water in our yards. I mean, God, when I was a kid, and I'd walk down the street, water would just be rushing down the gutters because people are overwatering their yards or doing whatever, and water was abundant. It was everywhere. Now that everyone is being very prudent about the amount of water they're putting on their yards, the amount of taking out their grass and all these different things, this water running down the streets, water's pooling up in other areas like that, it doesn't really exist anymore. So if you want to give something to wildlife that they're really looking for, it's water in any way. If you can get it moving, that's the best. If you can't, still put it out.
Love it. Thank you. Any
All right.
questions for Scott? All right, then the next thing we're going to do, if you stick with us, is have a drawing for Scott's gorgeous book, gorgeous and informative book.
Oh, that's beautiful book.
So let's let Scott get on with his day. Thank you very much, Scott.
All right. Well, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.